welcome back for another Music Theory Bite. In this video, I'm going to talk about identifying synthetic scales. If that sounds like something you'd like to learn more about, then stick around because this video is for you. Before you watch this video, however, you need to check out my video on singing and creating synthetic scales. That will explain most of the theory that you're going to need to understand what goes on in this video. So go check that video out. If you haven't done so already, then come back to this one and we'll learn how to identify, put a label on these scales. So just to review, synthetic scales are based off of major or minor scales. We typically use three techniques to derive them. We either omit pitches, alter pitches, or add pitches. And we can, of course, combine those techniques together. So those are the things we're going to be listening for. So when we have to identify a synthetic scale, the first thing we need to do is listen to the scale or listen to the piece of music that's using that scale and get a sense of several things. So step one, after you've listened to it a little bit, you have to find the tonal center. If it's being presented to you just as a scale, typically that's the first pitch or the high pitch and the low pitch. If it's within the context of a piece of music, you're going to have to listen carefully for what techniques the composer is using in order to create a sense of tonal centricity. Oftentimes when we alter pitches, we can blur that sense of where the tonal center is, so listen especially to the end of an improvisation to make sure that you're really clear on where the tonal center is. It all depends on figuring out where the tonic is. Step two, we're going to determine the modality. That is, are we basing this off of a major scale or a minor scale? Step three, oftentimes I find it helpful to listen to the approach to tonic, especially from below. Oftentimes we'll hear it has a leading tone or a subtonic or some other approach to tonic that can really help to identify what's going on in the pitch collection. It doesn't necessarily tell you everything you need to know, but it can be helpful. Step four, listen for altered, missing, or added scale degrees. So you might want to take an inventory of what scale degrees you hear. When you hear a scale degree 2, check it off. When you hear scale degree 4, but it's altered, check it off and make sure that you've noted that it's altered. And then finally, we're going to name the scale once we have all that information. So when I do this, I typically start out by creating a little chart for myself. That is, I have the major or minor for identifying the modality once I hear it. I will circle one of those two, and then I write my scale degrees across the page. And notice I've underlined the 1s and the 3s. Tonic isn't going to move. That is, we can't alter tonic without upsetting the whole sense of tonal centricity. So that's not going to move. Scale degree 3, once we establish the modality, isn't going to move either. That is, we can have an added scale degree 3, an added pitch around scale degree 3, but scale degree 3 itself, once we determine that it's major or minor, is going to stay exactly where it is. So those 3 scale degrees you're not going to want to make any adjustments to. Those are basically going to be there and they're not going to have any alterations to them. So let's listen to a scale. So I listened to it and I heard that this one definitely sounds like it has a major quality about it. So I'm going to circle my M, my capital M, to show that I've heard it as major. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to it again probably and figure out what I'm hearing in there. It didn't sound like there were a lot of altered pitches, but there was one pitch that really stood out when I heard it, and that was the 6th scale degree. That thing was in its lowered position, creating kind of a harmonic minor scale at the top, but I still had that major scale degree 3. So everything taken together then, I take a look at that and I see that I have major scale with a lowered scale degree 6. I didn't pick up any other alterations, so now I have to name the scale. And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the fact that it has that harmonic minor upper tetrachord with a major type of sound, so I would call this a harmonic major scale, or I could use the other technique of naming this and call it a major scale with a lowered 6th scale degree. Both of those are theoretically descriptive and they tell me exactly what goes into the scale. So now I know that I'm dealing with something that's in the minor area, so I'm going to circle the little m indicating it's minor, and then I listen for the altered scale degrees, and I'll notice that I have a lowered 2nd scale degree in there, and I didn't hear any other alterations. The 6 and 7 sound like they're in their lowered positions, and when I do this, I'm generally assuming the natural minor form of the scale, So if I hear the harmonic minor or melodic minor form, I would put arrows up next to the 6 or the 7. So in this case, I heard a natural minor scale with a lowered second scale degree. Now this scale has a name that we should all know, and that is the Phrygian mode. So rather than describing it using the theoretical terms, because it's a scale that is in common usage that almost everyone knows, I would just go ahead and label this as a Phrygian scale. Let's go on to another scale, except this time let's do an improvisation. So I'm going to listen to my improvisation first. And I notice it has a very major sound to it. I listened to the approach to tonic, and I had a leading tone there. I also listened for altered added scale degrees. I didn't hear anything in there that sounded chromatic, so when I go and I do my inventory of pitches that I had available to me, I noticed that I never heard a scale degree 4 anywhere in there. So that means I'm going to have a major scale with no scale degree 4, and I would indicate that by crossing out the 4 as I've just done here. Let's do one more. So now I'm going to listen to the music first. This is going to be another improvisation, so I'm going to listen to it. Clearly this has a minor sound to it. I listened to my approach to tonic, especially from below. In this case, I heard lots of subtonics there. And now doing the inventory, I heard one pitch that kind of sounded like it was chromatic, and so that's the one that really stood out to me. I do my inventory of pitches, and I find that I have both a natural 4 and a sharp 4 in this scale. I don't have any other alterations, so what I would do is I'd mark my chart like this with the minor circled, and since I have both a natural 4 and a sharp 4 and a natural 5, if I wanted to mark this as a flat 5, I would simply add in between scale degree 4 and 5 that sharp 4, just to show that I heard that there's an added chromatic pitch in there. A good way to practice this skill is to get together with a practice buddy and have your friend play scales for you. Just improvise music based off of these exotic scales and try to identify what's going on in there. Another great way to practice this is to improvise. That is, come up with a synthetic scale and play it on an instrument and just see if you can exploit the possibilities of what's in there. You're going to want to really exploit any altered tones or any added tones. And then, of course, if there's a missing tone, you're going to want to make sure you stay away from that, but exploit the possibilities that are taken away by removing that tone. Well, that does it for this video. If you found it helpful, please make sure you like it. Feel free to leave constructive comments below, and as always, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel for the latest music theory bites as they become available. Until next time.